What's up, Broncos fans? I'm back here again to do another video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the Broncos finally hiring a new head coach. They announced earlier this week that Vic Fangio will become the new head coach of the Denver Broncos. This is the fourth coach that Elway has hired since taking over as president of football operations back in 2011. It's a 4-year deal for Vic Fangio as the new head man of the Denver Broncos with a 5th-year team option. Very interesting hire by the Broncos. Honestly, when all the candidates were being rumored and the names were being thrown out there as guys we were interviewing, I honestly wasn't excited about any of them, including Vic Fangio, whether it was him, Mike Munchak, Mike McCarthy, Chuck Pagano, bringing back Mike Shanahan, which really was upsetting to hear. None of them really popped for me, honestly, as a Broncos fan. None of them excited me, and none of them were guys that I viewed as guys that should be in the running for a head coaching position or for our franchise in particular, like what we needed right now. So part of me is really not a big fan of this hiring. I'm not real huge on us bringing in Vic Fangio. I know I'm in the minority when I say that, though. I know there's a lot of Broncos fans and media alike that really love this hiring and love the toughness, so to say, and the attitude and the nastiness, so to say, that they think Vic Fangio will bring to our team, especially our defense, and his attention to detail on that side of the football. And those are all things I respect and can admire about Vic Fangio. You're talking about a guy that's been in coaching for over 30 years, so he's been around the block. He's seen it all, and it's great for him on one hand, just looking at this as a human being. It's great to see someone that is 60 years old and been in the coaching profession for 3 decades finally get a chance at being a head coach. I can appreciate and respect that and feel good for Vic Fangio for that reason. But looking at this just from my standpoint and my viewpoint as a Broncos fan and giving my honest opinion on it, again, I'm not a huge fan of this hiring of Vic Fangio. He's not the kind of coach or guy that I think this team needed right now. And again, I know that there's a lot of people that are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. Sports is subjective. Everything in life is relatively subjective, and that's what's great about YouTube and this space is we all can give our opinions on these things and agree or disagree and discuss it and talk about it and throw ideas off one another. But to be brutally honest, it's not a hiring that I'm super fond of, and when the news broke on Wednesday, I was definitely very disappointed. I definitely think this is a better hiring than, say, Mike Munchak, who was the other leading candidate, I guess, that the Broncos were interested in, which for whatever reason I don't understand. I truly don't understand why Mike Munchak or Vic Fangio was viewed as a leading candidate for a head coaching vacancy for our franchise currently and given what we need. But nonetheless, this is what we got, and again, Vic Fangio is now the Broncos head coach. You're talking about a guy, again, who a lot of people have described as an evil genius as a defensive coordinator, a guy that's 60 years old. He'll be 61 before next season starts. So you're talking about a guy that has a plethora of experience in terms of coaching and dealing with players. I was the former defensive coordinator most recently, obviously, for the Bears, and before that, obviously, well known for his 3 or 4 seasons with the San Francisco 49ers and what he was able to do with Jim Harbaugh and get that Niners defense to be vaunted for those couple seasons and eventually get them to a Super Bowl as well. But he also was the defensive coordinator at one point for the Texans, Colts, and Panthers. I believe he even was a defensive coordinator at Stanford. So again, a guy that's been around the block, has coached at multiple levels and truly is, I think, a great defensive mind. But I'm not sure we needed a defensive coach. I mean, you look at John Elway, again, this is his 4th coach that he's hired since 2011. John Fox and Vance Joseph were also defensive-minded coaches, and we saw how that turned out. And to be totally honest with you, with all due respect to Vic Fangio, and I think he probably is a better coach than John Fox, this hiring reminds me a lot of John Fox. He to me is a better, maybe grittier version of John Fox, maybe a more grumpy, less politically correct version of John Fox. And again, I don't know how thrilled I am with that. But again, the track record speaks for itself, and especially in terms of his ability as a defensive coordinator. 8 of his defenses have finished in the top 10. 5 of them have finished in the top 5. So you're talking about a guy, again, that has had vaunted defenses throughout his 3 decades plus of coaching. And I do think he will bring a grittiness and a nastiness to our defense that maybe we've been missing since our Super Bowl 50 win in 2015. But again, I don't think the defense was the big issue for the Broncos. I don't think the defense was the thing that needed a new spark or needed to be addressed. I was really hoping we'd bring in an offensive mind, and everyone keeps calling Vic Fangio a mob boss and the evil genius and this great defensive mind, and he's had players back that, and Chicago Bears fans have spoken real highly of him, and I know a lot of Broncos fans have spoken real highly of him in terms of his ability as a defensive coach. But people got to realize this is a guy, at least in his last 2 tentures as defensive coordinator, whether it be with the Niners or Bears, had a plethora of talent to coach. It's not like he was, making these elite defenses with no names. This is a guy that had the likes of Khalil Mack, obviously, Akeem Hicks, Patrick Willis, one of the greatest linebackers of all time, Navarro Bowman, Justin Smith, Kyle Fuller, Dante Whitner, Deshaun Goldson, Roquan Smith, who looks like one of the best young linebackers in the game today, Eddie Jackson, who's just a ball hawk. It's not like he didn't have a bunch of talent in those two teams and with those 2 teams. So I think this evil genius label that he's been tabbed with, and some of the credit he's being given as a great defensive mind, I think while it's well deserved, and I do respect that he is a great defensive mind, I appreciate his attention to detail on that side of the football. I think people got to slow their roll and maybe take a step back a little bit and look at kind of the talent he also had at his disposal. Not to say we don't have talent. We have, obviously guys like Von Miller and Bradley Chubb and Derek Wolfe and Will Parks and Justin Simmons and Chris Harris, Josie Jewell, guys that I think he definitely can utilize and help elevate their game. But if you think Vic Fangio's coming into a situation with the talent level that he had in San Francisco on the defensive side of football, or most recently with the Bears, especially this last season, you'd be fooling yourself. And again, I think all the things that are being said about Vic Fangio are correct in terms of him being a great defensive mind, in terms of him being an experienced head coach, in terms of him having a great attention to detail and bringing a grittiness and a nastiness, so to say, to this franchise. I think he will do that, and toughness. I think he will do those things to a certain extent. But again, I don't think he's the kind of coach, and a bigger thing, I don't think he's the kind of man or person that we needed right now. I don't think he was the kind of guy that's going to come in and solve our main issues, which again, all really rely on the offensive side of the football. And the thing about Vic Fangio, as I was reading some of the reports when this news broke on Wednesday about Vic Fangio, and again, this is a guy that's been in coaching for 32 years and is a highly touted coordinator, and it makes you think, like, why did it take so long for him to get a shot to be a head coach? Again, he'll be 61 when the season starts, so it's like he's obviously getting a chance later in life to finally be a head coach. And as a human being, part of me feels great for him, because that's great that he's finally getting the chance. But you hear some of these things in these reports, mainly the report I read by Ian Rappaport, who works for NFL.com. He mentioned that Vic Fangio throughout the league wasn't really viewed as a head coach for years because of his personality and because he's not media friendly, so to say. And I don't really have a big issue with a head coach not being media friendly, and I don't think that should be the end all be all of someone not getting an opportunity. But you go into it and dive a little deeper, and you hear some of the ways he's described it in terms of his personality, and people are saying he's got like a real gruff personality, and he can be real grumpy and a bit of a curmudgeon. And at 61 years old, being a curmudgeon and grumpy and gruff, I'm not sure, and you're a first-time head coach, I'm not sure that's what I want personality-wise for a first-time head coach, and for a guy that's leading a bunch of 20 and 30-year-old men. I hate to harp on this again, but ultimately this hiring once again kind of shows the faults and flaws and to an extent failures of John Elway as a general manager or president of football operations, and just the lack of awareness he has about his team. And again, I know he hates to use the word rebuilding, and this move really, hiring Vic Fangio, signifies that once again we're trying to win now and we're trying to compete now. But I don't think hiring Vic Fangio is going to bridge that gap, so to say, that you have just in your division alone with teams like Kansas City and LA Chargers, but even other teams like New England or Indianapolis or or Houston or Baltimore. I mean, you are far off, in my opinion, from competing with the likes of those teams, and just bringing in Vic Fangio, I don't think is like, oh, we're back. I think Elway's really trying hard to replicate 2015 and what we were able to do in 2015, and we just don't have that similar team and makeup of that team right now, and I think trying to live in the past and replicate the past, and even with fans, the way they give Elway passes saying he's a winner, and he's so passionate, as a, he bleeds orange and blue, and I wouldn't, want anyone else running the team. I respect all of that. I truly respect that, and I will always respect John Elway as a quarterback and what he did for this organization and franchise, and going to 5 Super Bowls and winning 2 of them, and then winning the Super Bowl 50 as an executive in 2015. I always will respect that, but living in the past and constantly trying to replicate your past successes rather than trying to evolve and moving forward, to me, is a very scary thing to do, especially in sports, and especially when you're the guy running the whole show. So that really concerns me with John Elway, this hiring. It really is a hiring that to me shows a lack of awareness, and as a guy that I just think is so hell-bent on not accepting that his team is in rebuilding mode. And again, I think John Elway needs to stop living in the 80s and 90s, in 1997 and 98, even stop living in 2015, and really try to evolve. And again, I want to preface this by saying I respect all Broncos fans that are, have that opinion that Elway is a winner and view him as the right guy to run this team. I respect that, and he is a winner, but at the same time, look what he's done the past 3 years. At the end of the day, this business and life itself, a lot of the times, is what have you done for me lately, especially in this business, in the sports business, especially as a team builder. And at the end of the day, the last 2 seasons were 11 and 21. And a lot of that has to do with the job that John Elway has done and his lack of awareness. And you can tell me about the drafting and all that stuff about, a lot of the players he drafted are still in the NFL. Doesn't mean they're good. A lot of those players are second and third string, players that are on other teams. I mean, again, the guy's drafted 1 Pro Bowler in 7 years. That's a big issue. And there's positions that he is, our team is desperately needed to fill that he's failed to fill, and just put a Band-Aid over by signing the aging free agent. So this move and hiring really concerns me more so from that standpoint, once again, of just Elway's lack of awareness. And again, with all the candidates that were brought up, and guys like Mike Munchak and Mike Shanahan, I definitely would probably rather have Vic Fangio over them. So on one side of the coin, I'm happy that we have Vic Fangio rather definitely than a guy like Mike Munchak, who I think would have been just absolutely awful. But I still think hiring Vic Fangio is not a great move, and I think it's a pretty bad decision. And again, I honestly don't think Vic Fangio is going to last his contract here. I don't think he's going to last in 4 years, and I think this is a move a couple years from now that we look back and this might be the last straw for Elway in terms of maybe moving on from him as a GM. But we'll see. That's the great thing. Time will always tell. And the great thing is it could be a success, and Vic Fangio could be the right guy for the job. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the hire. And I just don't think Vic Fangio was the kind of coach that we need right now. And that doesn't mean I'm right, and it also doesn't mean the people that think he is the right, choice, and are in love with this hiring are right as well. Again, time will be the ultimate decider of that, but I truly believe this was a poor decision by John Elway. Once again, a poor hiring, and as great as a defensive coach as Vic Fangio is, I don't think we needed another defensive coach, especially one whose personality, you hear some of the things, it's very concerning to hear some of the things about him, in terms of being a curmudgeon and things of that lines. Again, this hiring reminds me a lot of John Fox, just a little bit more of a straightforward, less politically correct version of John Fox, and we saw how that worked out in the end. And I don't know how this move's gonna totally work out, but regardless, I welcome Vic Fangio to Denver, and I truly hope he does well, and I truly hope he's the guy, because I really don't want to be sitting here 2 to 3 years from now and talking about the 5th head coach we've hired since 2011 because Vic Fangio didn't work out. But I truly think that's going to be the case. I just don't think he was going to be. I don't think he's the guy that we needed, and I don't think he's the guy to solve the issues that we have. Leave me a comment below, guys. What do you think of having Vic Fangio as the new head coach of the Broncos, and what do you expect from the team going forward? And what do you think of what he'll bring to the table, and some of the things you know, positives about him, negatives about him? We'll love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments section below. And once again, I welcome Vic Fangio regardless of how I feel about the hiring to Denver, and I wish him the best of luck, truly. But I'm definitely concerned with bringing him in. And again, I think this hiring was a very poor decision overall. But nonetheless, that's my take on the Broncos hiring Vic Fangio. You guys have a great weekend. Enjoy the divisional round playoffs. Got some great games this weekend between the Colts and Chiefs, the Patriots and Chargers, the Rams and Cowboys, and then the Eagles and Saints. Just some great matchups. So enjoy all those, guys, and take care. Thank you for watching. Peace.